Say Negro, okay, all Negroes. We're Pan-African. We want to help everybody. When Marcus Garvey came over, we made Marcus Garvey a thing over here. We gave Marcus Garvey international clout.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of Kelly RealTalks. Today we are going to talk about an ongoing debate that has become more prevalent in both online and offline conversation, whether or not immigrants will be living in America today if it weren't for black efforts. This is a difficult conversation for some. We will not shy away from having tough conversation on this channel, and we will do so through the use of history, context, and facts. Let's first watch these clips and I'll be back.
Say Negro, okay, all Negroes. We're Pan-African. We want to help everybody. When Marcus Garvey came over, we made Marcus Garvey a thing over here. We gave Marcus Garvey international clout. When other people come over, we embrace them. In fact, when immigrant groups came over here, it was us fighting for immigrant groups. Even in the early 1900s, around 1915, it was black people fighting for immigrants to come over here from the Caribbean because the white supremacists had all types of rules and statutes that they didn't want black people coming over here. Speaking of Marcus Garvey, it was Booker T. Washington to help get Marcus Garvey to come over here.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of folks don't know that. In the 1960s, it was foundational black Americans using the momentum from the civil rights movement fighting to get immigrants over here from Africa and the Caribbean because we wanted them to come over to be reinforcements for us. You see,
I need someone to explain to me what's so hard about understanding that Black Americans have over 400 years of history and culture. What is so difficult in conceptualizing that? We was literally the backbone of and built a new country by force. Like America would not be what it was and what it is today without Black Americans. 400 years of history, of culture, of families, of generations. What makes you think we're lost at all and don't have any connection to any roots? Right? And let's not talk about lineages to Africa for a second. So we could talk about that all day long. We could never know where our people were from in Africa and we would still have roots. I don't know why that's so difficult to conceptualize. And actually, you know what? There's always so much talk about Black Americans needing to be proud and have pride in our origins in Africa. And I agree with y'all. I've been to the continent, one country, Senegal, and I felt so much pride and connection there. And I agree so much, I have so much connection that the rest of y'all should have pride in Black Americans too. Where's your pride in Black Americans as not being Black Americans? Our ancestors was your ancestors' cousins. They were family, baby, and they brought and cultivated an entire culture while surviving bondage, a thriving culture, mind you. A culture that we love, talking about having a lot of origins in Africa. Okay, so if we're so connected, right? Have pride in the culture that we built here. Have pride in the culture that literally is the backbone of an entire country. Not just America, but the entire Western Hemisphere due to forced labor. They still brought culture that thrived in North America, and the Caribbean, and Latin America, and South America. Have pride in us the same way that we should have pride in our origins elsewhere, okay? We're not lost. We have roots. We have culture. We have history.
Immigrants did not build America. Slaves and their descendants, Black Americans, built America, quite literally with their hands, okay? Let me explain to you the issue with Shabuzi's Grammy speech. Let me start by saying that immigrants have greatly enriched this country, okay? We would not be where we are without them. However, they did not build America. And I think this is such an important distinction to make during Black History Month because the comment, immigrants built America, is rooted in the erasure of Black contribution, okay? Specifically, Black American contribution, however involuntary it was. I understand that Shabuzi was coming from a good place when he said that immigrants built this country, but historically and factually, it is incorrect, baby. Chattel slavery built this country. And it is important to recognize that. People don't want to talk about slavery, but the reality is that slavery in the cotton economy is what gave America its legs, baby. There would be no America without slavery. The enrichment that is immigration did not come until significantly after slavery, right? Slavery dates back to the 1600s, girl, okay? All the way until 1865, where we get the Emancipation Proclamation. And even after this point, there were some Black people who were still being held captive as slaves because they just didn't get the news yet, girl, okay? So when you think about that, how long slavery spanned, okay? And the fact that we get ushered into Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and slaves are now repurposed as sharecroppers, right? or repurposed into roles in which they are only good for service. They are only good for, functional positions that help prop up the country, not actual careers, not anything actually profitable. Like literally, Black people simply migrated from slavery into something else until we get into the civil rights era. For the people who think that we're arguing semantics, not only is this an important distinction to make so that we are recounting American history and Black history accurately, but also because the suppression of Black history, the erasure of Black history, okay, is what leads to the repetition of these atrocities, not on Black bodies, but onto others. And this idea that Black history and American history, when it repeats, that it's going to repeat with the same people, it does not. It does not. And I think we're seeing a little bit of the proof, but that will never, ever, ever change the fact that the biggest and greatest group affected by American history, affected by the American plight, and that actually built America is Black American descendants of slaves.
Now, let's begin by discussing what people mean when they say this. The argument is that Black Americans have spent centuries fighting to create democratic expansion within the USA through the fight against slavery reconstruction and the civil rights movement. Black Americans created a more open society with greater access to immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, and Latin America by fighting against racist laws, segregation, and poor immigration policies. Therefore, modern immigrants have a direct benefit because of the accomplishments of Black Americans through their blood, sweat, and organizing efforts. From a historical standpoint, Black struggles shaped the nation that we currently Black people live in. Prior to the enactment of the Immigration and National Act in 1965, laws governing immigration into the USA favored primarily to Europeans. The INA created opportunities for thousands of immigrants to enter the USA from Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia. It's also important to note that the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 did not occur in a vacuum. It occurred during an era that included the Civil Rights Act 1964 and Voting Rights of 1965, which were authored by a group of African Americans who pressured the USA to deal with its systemic racism. Essentially, when people indicate that immigrants to the USA could not exist without the efforts of African Americans or Black Americans, they imply that the movement led by Black Americans against an equal system, the racial structure, were directly or indirectly responsible for dismantling an unequal or progressive system viewed through the lens of immigration policy. With that said, however, the conversation about immigrant communities is complex. Immigration to the US existed and was central long before the Immigration and Nationality Act 1965. There were massive waves of Irish, Italian, German, and several other groups of individuals migrating to the US throughout the early 1800s, as well as throughout the early 1900s. Therefore, immigration to US as a phenomenon was always a critical part of the information of the US. The US has consistently been building by two forms of migratory activity: forced migration, slavery, and voluntary chosen migration. A major straightforward version might state a large-scale non-European immigration is permitted due to the fact that US law and identity were changed after the civil rights movement. So why are we still having an emotional discussion about this issue today? Increasingly, there is increased conflict between Black Americans and many other newer immigrant communities, for example, those from Africa and the Caribbean or Latin America. Historically speaking, Black Americans feel that by the arrival of these non-Black immigrants, they are being pushed aside from their long-fought civil rights struggle, given many of the same rights as other African Americans at the same time. Migrants, on the other hand, feel that they too have been treated with racism or denied an equality or socioeconomic status upon their entry into the country. Let's not make this discussion provide additional division among our brothers and sisters. The reality of the situation The history of oppression by white supremacy and racial hierarchy has created a chasm between the experiences of Black Americans and many immigrant groups. While historically Black Americans have experienced chattel slavery and systemic oppression in the US for over 400 years, many of the immigrants who arrived to the country are doing so voluntarily but will also endure institutional discrimination at the hands of others once they reach the borders. Rather than debating who deserves the country more, think about a more relevant and deeper question. How do we establish unity between Black people? Historically, Pan-African movements and African independence movements have influenced one another along with the social justice movement around the world. Martin Luther King Jr. took his inspiration from various anti-colonial movements during the 1960s. The civil rights movement of the United States inspired African leaders to bring democracy to their own countries. This historical cross-pollination between the diaspora has always existed. As such, yes, Black Americans played an important part in building the US democratic process. And yes, many immigrants today enjoy the benefits provided by that extended civil rights. Respect is vital in recognizing this history. Acknowledgement should not breed resentment. Acknowledgement should promote understanding. We should ask who is harmed by Black Americans and immigrants clashing online? The people that are affected by the high cost of housing, or the people that deal with being over-policed are not helped by this division. Dividing us weakens the power of our community members. At Kelly RealTalks, we strive to maintain balance in the content by honoring the rich history of Black Americans and acknowledging the journeys of our immigrant communities members, and confronting narratives that foster division between Black people and diaspora. If you made this far, kindly make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop your comments in the comment section. Do you think the statement is historically accurate? Do you think it's being used to divide Black people? Let's have a respectful, intelligent discussion and share this video with someone who needs to hear the perspective. This is Kelly RealTalks, where we keep it real and focus on all information. I'll see you in the next one.